Call the
Okay.
meeting to order?
Yeah,
Ah.
call to order. And, let's see, open session, public meetings are subject to being recorded. Your image and voice may be recorded. All right, let me get started with the handouts from Kristen. We'll turn it over to her.
Sure, thank you very much. The first handout I wanted to discuss was the draft budget memo that I have here. This did go to the select board Monday evening for review. And I had sent that draft out to you Tuesday. The only change I really made was to add in the vote that the select board did take Monday evening, which was to approve the recommended 2.5% increase in expenses over FY '23 and to approve the personnel committee's recommendation of a 2.5% COLA for non-union, non-contract employees, and that's about 2/3 of the way down the page on the first page. I don't know how much I don't know if you've seen this, if you want me to kind of summarize it or go into more detail, but there is just an introduction that talks about the economic impact of COVID-19, which we're all unfortunately intimately aware of, with supply chain issues, energy price spikes, and inflation. It talks about different state agencies and local government entities that are offering COLAs, some for the first time in many years, or increasing COLAs to adjust for these factors. And I did add a little bit in, since we did the recap sheet and we looked at revenues, I am able to report that our local projection, or what does that say, projections? Local receipts, that should say, sorry, not local projections. Our local receipts continue to trend positively. We don't anticipate state aid reductions in the coming year, and our local receipts were slightly higher in '21 with significant increases in hotel tax, motor vehicle excise, and building permits. I do believe this revenue stability that we're seeing will enable us to slowly begin to build back from those cuts that were made during the pandemic. But we do need to obviously, be cautious and balance impact on taxpayers as well. The Personnel Committee, just on one further note, is still considering recommendations on wage increases for certain positions that are below market rate, potential merit increases, and they will be meeting next week. I believe Wednesday they are meeting. And that brings us to page 2, where I wanted to insert a message from the FinCom. I would need to have that this evening. We are preparing the budget packages tomorrow to go out Monday. The rest of the memo basically is instructions for the department heads on how to complete the budget based on the information that I've previously discussed. Budgets are due Wednesday, November 30th at 4 p.m. to the town accountant. And then the process is, once reviewed by June, they'll be sent to me to include in the draft budget document, and then for distribution to the select board and the FinCom. FinCom, as you've already determined, will begin meeting with departments in December, and then the select board may meet with some departments. And then the back of page 3 is just a checklist for department heads of all of the components that need to be submitted with the budget. So I don't know if you folks had a chance to look at this, or if based on this you had an idea of kind of what you might want to put through for a message, or if you want to make it a joint message. It's entirely obviously up to you as to how you might like to approach it.
Last time we kind of, it was as a joint, more of a joint message, even though there was like the one paragraph that was pretty much the opinion with the town administrator and finance committee and the select board. So we'd probably like to keep it as a one common message. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I'm looking at last year's separate memo, Scott.
The only thing offhand that I was, interested was on the one that, from the select board and that stuff was, I know the emphasis is still talking about like COVID-19, but I think at this point too, we almost have to acknowledge that war in Europe is a huge part of what the inflation issues are right now too, besides COVID-19. So I don't know if you want to talk or make a reference to other international events or some nature, because we're not talking just a COVID world anymore that's our problems.
Yeah,
You can just like say global,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, just global events impacting, I don't know.
Or say global events and tick off any, examples of, or. I think most people agree that that's the, why our, energy costs are so high is right there, and that's impacting, of course, everything that's downstream.
Actually, it's the lack of fracking. Didn't you see that commercial?
No. It's
I think I got a text message from a random person to that effect.
Yeah. 2 text messages right before the election.
Oh, so many.
You could say national and global, and then really,
Cover it all.
because
Right, the supply chain thing is actually residual COVID-19.
So I guess one thing we could also consider is, I don't know if the FinCom would be ready to take a vote, or if this is customary, and I'm not sure, on the COLA and the expense increase. Is that typically done here, or?
Usually you have at least some agreement or disagreement or.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a formal vote. I feel
I
like
don't
it's
think
just,
so.
we just kind of incorporate it into our discussion during the budget process.
And into the message, okay. I
Yeah,
wasn't
yes,
sure.
I think that when the select board votes, it's a roll-up of personnel committee and finance committee.
Okay, we just got a little out of order then this time.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't think there's, others will speak, but I don't think there's a disagreement about
Hopefully not too highly controversial.
it. No.
Could
I'm
be.
surprised, well, I'm
Could
surprised
be.
they're leaving it at like 2.5, what where inflation is. To be honest, I thought we were gonna see more like a 5% increase.
I think they kind of talked a little bit about it and they wanted to leave it open to continue to bring up some of the people that are under market.
Oh.
And also, step increases if possible.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of left it that way.
That was
Personnel-
what
personnel
personnel
did?
said.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was kind of their
Makes
thought
sense.
process with it.
Yeah, I have no objection to their going towards 2.5%, because last time I was ever in this situation, I know the select board was going strictly by Social Security increase, and that's what they would have been proposing. So 2.5% is significantly below what that number is. So.
It is, and Social Security, just for the folks watching, if you're not aware, will add an 8.7% COLA in '23, which is the largest inflation-fueled increase in benefits in 4 years. So it's pretty significant. And the state retirees did receive a 5% COLA effective July 1 of this year. But it's interesting when you look at the MMHR data, which is Mass Municipal data from local cities and towns, which I did check again today, and I would say we have almost a third maybe of the cities and towns in there, somewhere between a third to a half. Their average is still at 2.34% that they're looking at
Wow.
for COLAs. So, and their range was still within that one outlier of 4.7%. Which I'm not really sure where they came up with that. But not sure where 8.7% came from either, so,
I think they had a lower one the year before
did they?
versus everybody else, so I think that's where that came from.
Could be to offset the fact that they didn't do it, or
Yeah.
it was low the year before.
Yeah.
I was listening to an economic analysis in the radio earlier this afternoon. Somebody pointed out that the consumer price index is a lagging indicator of inflation. So the fact that, that September was at 8.1% doesn't mean that we're gonna see that in January,
Yep.
right? So, I mean, we may not.
Yeah.
But I think that's important to put in the mix, that it's a lagging indicator of where prices have gone. Doesn't predict
Right.
that we're gonna see, at that point next year, at this point next year, another 8%.
Right.
But I agree with Stan that we have, probably have some making up to do for being so frugal the last few years because of COVID.
And we wanna balance it though too, because, as the select board set the tax rate, there is on average somewhere between a $300 and a $400 increase on the average, single-family home tax bill. So we want to be cognizant of that and not push ourselves over, into anything that would look exorbitant and saying, oh, we're putting this all on the taxpayers either. So there is a bit of a balancing act there as well.
Yeah, because we're having a major shift now with the real estate
Commercial.
values going up, what was it, 20%? Is that what?
Home, commercial values decreased.
Decreased
And then
hugely.
residential faced a
Increased,
huge
so
increase.
the shift is now, and when Molly was looking at the sales this year, she said it was already at 15% for next year. As far as, of course, who knows what the next 6 months are gonna bring, but, and she's already seeing 15% increase of value again next year on
Right.
top of it, and commercial right now is not going up, so.
Yeah.
What was the average about, and what's the, for a home, and what's the average, valuation of that home? That the average is, do you know? But you said the
So-
average
Well,
was what?
like
So the average single-family home, I will have to get what that valuation is. It
Yeah, cause it was between 3 and 4, but there are a lot of new homes.
right?
So there's like new tax bills that are like $10,000 more, and there's a couple that actually are gonna get a decrease. So when you average everything together, it comes out to roughly about between $300 and $400 on the average is what she had down, but I don't remember what she used for the value.
Was it 425,000?
I thought it was four.
I was online.
I was gonna say it was
I was
4
online,
and
I
change.
think I remember that, 4 and a quarter, 430 something.
Actually, but I believe you're right, Mary.
Couldn't make up the value.
I've been swimming in numbers, so sometimes they don't stick.
They never stick.
Let's see. Pull up her, spreadsheet.
But because there was also such a big change between the residential and the commercial, we actually were able to increase the local receipts a little bit, so it didn't hurt quite as much. It wasn't a lot, but we were able to do that just because of the meal tax that came in higher and the hotel tax came in higher. So we were able to help offset the big, because it was a really big, quick shift when we first did it. But we were able to comfortably, I think, increase the local receipts that I think will be able to cover them without having any deficits there.
Yeah.
As long as everything continues the way it is.
With that increase being, keeping it at only a 300 to 400.
Yes, because originally it came in at almost 8. I think it was 8 to 9, I think is where,
Yes.
when we first looked at it, went, oh, that's not gonna be good. But
Wow, okay, so this is higher than I thought, so I'm looking at, Molly's data, the assessor's data, and she has the average assessed value of a single family home at $558,500.
I was gonna say, I thought it was 500.
Yeah,
Really?
$558,500 for single family and $330,800 for condo.
It was about 331K for condo,
Mhm.
558K
And about
for
$559
single
for
family
single
home.
family. Yep.
Okay.
But June, you were saying that 8 or 900, the number, that it was 800 or so, but they were able to offset it with local receipts. But you said that that's also a function of new homes coming online that are at 10, 11, whatever
Yeah,
thousand.
so
So it's not
There
not
is a big-
necessarily your average person, your average existing home in town isn't necessarily going to go, or is that, or are you
No,
saying?
that's with the, cause what we did was, she did an average first, and then she showed it, and I think it was like, still around 7 or 8. But when she plugged in actual numbers and did a sample, cause that's what we were looking at, because of the commercial shift, we wanted to know what actual tax bills were gonna look like as far as the differences, and that's what she did, and she plugged it in. And like I said, she probably did, I don't know, what was it, like 50 bills or something like that she pulled, maybe a little bit more. And, like I said, some of them were, people were getting back $10. Not that many, but there was a few of them that were getting
Yeah.
back money, you know, and then it started, you know, she had it high to low, and, you know, there was a few hundred, and then there was 2, 3, 4, 5, and then, like I said, there was a few that were up to the newer homes that hadn't been, assessed fully for the year before were in there, and those were like $10,000-$15,000 bills, so those definitely
Right.
like,
Skewed up.
yeah, so, but that was what we were seeing, was most of them were between anywheres from 250 to, it's like 450, give or take a few in the,
But that's on this tax bills now that are going out in
yes,
Correct.
November and then in May.
yeah.
Which have those got, my wife
They are
just asked me,
still,
said-
they are still in tying everything out, so the bills haven't gone out, we're hoping next week they'll go out, but
And they'll be due, what, December 1st or when?
30 days, so. You know, just around the holidays.
Yeah, perfect.
We're gonna be on everyone's naughty list.
Office is gonna be closed for a month.
Yeah, there'll be a truckload of coal blocking the front door.
Yeah.
Pretty
Well,
much.
better than coming in January 15th when the actual credit card bills come in.
Well, there you go.
That's true,
There you
that's
go.
true, post-holiday.
You mentioned the local receipts. What, I know we've, well, because it was so new just before, as COVID was hitting, was particularly the hotel receipts. I think, what kind of number are you using for that, or targeting what, compared to what we thought we were gonna be? 'Cause I think we were way low.
We were
For-
really, really low. I think it came in, I don't have the numbers. Do you have access to the
I
account?
sure do. Give me a moment, and I can give you exact numbers.
Cause I think we estimated the local receipts at about, I think it was, I don't know why, I'm thinking 871,000, give or take a few, I think is what we were estimating at, and I think we brought it up to a little over $1 million, I think,
Mhm.
is what we did to try to help offset the, cause we weren't really taking into consideration such a drastic swing between residential and commercial.
So I'm looking at our fiscal year 2020 budget on local receipts at 800,000. Our fiscal year 23 proposed was almost 900,000. So
Yeah, I
you're
think
saying
it
they're
was
up from
eight.
that.
Yeah, they actually came in though a lot higher than what we had anticipated because they continued to increase as far as the hotel goes, and they were a big chunk with the hotel and the meals tax too.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
So that proposed almost 900 was low for the.
Which we were hoping it would be a little bit
Yeah,
low, so, cause
yeah.
we didn't wanna over budget as far as what we would actually say we were gonna raise and then have to come up with extra money
Right.
next year. But people were also really good this year, so I think our free cash is gonna look really healthy also, because
Mhm.
people didn't spend as much money as they were given to spend, because we so unsure.
Right. So actuals for hotel tax for 22 came in at 263, 246.10.
Actual came in 263,000.
Yep, and motor vehicle excise came in high as well at 690, 475.52.
What did you say the proposed one?
And there it is, yeah, local receipts.
Came in for fiscal year 22.
This is 22.
22, yes.
Yep.
Oh, so but that's all of them lumped together,
Yeah, that's all lumped together, so.
local receipts?
Yep.
Yeah, it's 800, okay.
I can actually, we can print that off and send it over to you.
Yep.
Because Kristen was giving us the breakdown, not the,
Yep.
not the total,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Because that's made up of excise,
Motor vehicle excise,
Hotels, meals.
the meal tax, the hotel tax, oh, look at you. Payment in lieu of taxes, interest, fees, other departmental stuff.
Those are all pretty minimal.
Building
The
permits.
Building
Oh,
permits
building
were
permits.
actually still good too. And we still, with building permits, we weren't sure, cause Richard had made a comment that things were still going a lot more steady this year than he was expected. So we did, just guessed, we actually collected 189 last year, and we only estimated it at 80, because we're really not sure. It was only a few, I think, up on Highland
Common, Ridge, right?
Ridge that haven't come in yet, but I know the meal tax, I think it was really low. The room tax.
Yeah.
So what I don't remember what we actually
I think we
estimated.
had
It's
like
60%.
40, was it 40?
I think it was like it was under 100,000 and we went up to 250.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
was the
yeah.
800, and 500,
yeah.
and
So
then
if it
800
was-
was.
Yeah, it went up to
So
6.
where you have that number there, like, so motor vehicle came in at 690, we went up to 600. So I mean, there was a lot that we could play with, but we felt, versus really hitting people hard on taxes that we didn't need to collect this year, that we could help offset it with the local receipts.
There was room there, and, you don't feel like saying,
No, 'cause-
let's raise the tax bill when we have that
It was a
room.
huge
It was a huge increase.
change, and unfortunately, the commercial are gonna be getting a lot of decrease in their taxes, but, so that's kinda, we didn't wanna give them too much more, but we also, every time we brought down the residential, it brought theirs down too, but we wanted to try to make it as
Yeah.
as possible.
It's a balancing act.
Well, based on that, I mean, part of it, what I would like to have, like, maybe the finance committee comments, be referencing is, courage to see that, at least revenue is stable or increasing, especially, areas like in local receipts that were coming in much higher, but to reflect, I would like to have it reflect the, as much as 2.5% may seem modest for COLA, or even increases on your regular budget, considering the inflation numbers, to put a comment in there regarding the major shift of that costs are moving to the residential versus away from commercial. And I think I would like to have, or at least in my opinion, would be a finance committee reference to that. I don't know how much people would read this type of stuff, but I know 2.5% is probably gonna look paltry to many, but I think that it's important for them to understand that they're not getting it from the Solomon Pond Mall or from other big businesses, they're getting it from their next door neighbor, who's gonna be paying that for them.
Right, who's also struggling with the
Yeah.
same economic realities that everyone hears.
And we are gonna have some increases definitely coming up as far as gas, fuel,
Yeah.
so, electricity, we're working on the electricity, but.
Yeah,
so we are
electricity's in
gonna
a
have-
much better situation. I'll throw my plug out there for electricity again. If you're not in the aggregation through the town, you can opt in at any time for no penalty, to opt in with the town, provided you check to make sure there's no penalty to opt out with whoever you're currently with. I'm not a lawyer, I just play one on TV.
So what are we looking for again for who the supplier is?
It's Next Era,
It says,
Next era?
Next Era.
on your bill, it will say Berlin.
Under
That-
supply,
Yes, say Berlin-NES.
there you go. Thank you.
It's on the back.
Yep.
I'm in, I checked it. It doesn't feel like I'm in.
I know. But with
But
National
it would
Grid
be worse,
is-
is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
As of November, National Grid jumped to 34 cents
The supply,
This is
yes.
the
per
supplier.
kilowatt hour.
Mm.
And their
From-
summer rate was
Do you think
14,
it's really
so
worth
that's a
waiting?
pretty
I didn't see a huge
substantial
increase.
increase.
All right.
Well, you said you needed, if for
Really
finance
good
to
evening.
make
I
it
don't
into this,
know,
you
I
need it
didn't-
tonight.
I didn't opt out.
So how's that gonna work?
Yeah, well, that's what I wonder is wants to be a typist
I was gonna
or
say,
author?
I took some notes if someone could just type it into maybe sentences, and if someone might be able to send it to me by morning, would that be possible? Oh, Mary's going here. You want my terrible
Now I have to
scribble,
pay attention.
no, I have terrible
I
scribble
have to pay
notes.
attention to Scott, so he's gonna have to tell me again.
I'm gonna have to be the middleman between these two.
Yes,
I
you
can
are.
tell you.
Oh
Yes, you
boy,
are.
I'm glad I'm
You
sitting,
calm
I'm
down.
glad
What
I'm
she was
sitting on
saying
this
is-
side.
You can do
I got my
it,
deaf
Stan.
ear to you guys.
You can do it.
I'll make sure you can hear it.
I didn't want this
Thanks,
responsibility
Scott.
anymore, you know.
Would you like me to read you what I took down of what you said?
Yeah.
You talked about national and global events such as the war in Ukraine and dot, dot, dot. You want
So,
any others?
okay, so we have the first sentence in your draft says, be shaped by the economic impact of COVID, which has resulted in supply chain issues, energy price spikes, and inflation. So I don't know whether Scott's earlier comment meant to, was feedback to you saying, let's change that sentence, or whether
Well,
he
yeah,
wants to.
correct. That was more or less feedback was saying maybe you want to add additional, it's just not
Oh, in
coded.
mine, I
Yes.
gotcha. I didn't know if
It-
you wanted to, I didn't know if you wanted to take the credit.
We
in
could.
your
I was gonna
section.
say,
We
why don't
could,
take the
but-
credit?
Yeah,
We're-
you-
We need Phil here, guys.
We need-
Okay.
Why don't we take
Phil.
the
It
credit?
doesn't matter how we
But,
put it, but it's,
It ought to be consistent, if it's gonna be in both places, it ought to be consistent, yeah?
Okay, well, let's just say it's in addition to COVID, there's other things, national and global events.
COVID-19 and national and global.
yeah, maybe you can just start out with the finance committee is in agreement with the, select board and town administrator regarding
Regarding.
the economic impacts of like COVID-19 and other world events on, inflation. I think we can just keep it as simple as inflation. Energy price spikes are part of inflation, so it's,
And you talked about,
yes, and-
being encouraged by revenues being stable and in some cases increasing,
yes,
such as local receipts coming in higher.
correct, particularly local receipts. You may even want to make just a reference to, such as, the hotel, the
Hotel
tax? And they said also the auto excise tax is also
Yep.
very strong.
Auto.
And then a reference to as much as the inflation numbers are high relative to the recommendation of 2.5% on expenses and COLAs, we must take into consideration that the tax burden is significantly shifting to the residential from commercial. Or whoever wants to word it in any other way.
Sorry, one more time with that one. Yeah, I'm not, I've never been paid to do this, so I'm not like out in front, you know?
Even, what was it? It
Although,
was-
I've
although-
got, so far, although inflation percentages are higher than the recommended COLA percentages, what are we saying, what's the punchline there?
For the, well, for expenses in COLA, we must take in consideration that the tax burden is significantly moving to the residential versus commercial. I don't know how you want to end it, or if that's a good way to end it.
There was, you put something in here that had to do with, just, I'm thinking out loud, sorry.
That's fine.
That, we were going to start increasing certain items that we had cut, but town is slowly beginning to build back from cuts made during the pandemic. I think we're trying to do that, but we're also trying to be as conservative still as possible with things are so uncertain. I just don't want people to think that all of a sudden we're just gonna start increasing things because we think we're in a good place.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, being conservative due to the economy, something to that effect?
Something maybe along that lines, because, I mean, we're gonna see some increases in budget requests, I think, because of the economy as far as gas and fuel and electricity and, and we did cut some budgets a lot, that now that we're back out there, there's more training now available, and there's, a few other things that we've run across already. Of course, we've had a lot of legal issues too, so unfortunately, that's gonna be something that we're gonna be chatting with y'all about, which we, but there's been a few others.
And there's some just
Training
fixed
that's-
costs that are gonna
Yep.
go up that we have no
So,
control over.
but it's not, we're just bringing everything back like we were.
Nope,
It's
I think
just-
that's a good kind of caveat to
Yeah,
add
just-
to that sentence.
We have people who go crazy and ask me for stuff.
No. I was just gonna say, which brings me to my supplemental funding request form, but I wanna make sure you're done with your
How you doing,
section.
Mary?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm, I don't know how much, all right, let me, I'll read it, Scott. I don't know how good you are at listening, but see how I am at typing. So, see how I am at listening and typing, listening and typing. That's multitasking.
Yeah.
Give it to a man. Am I being recorded yet? All
We
right,
are.
Here we go. The Finance Committee concurs with the Select Board and Town Administrator assessments of the economic impact of global inflation, COVID-19 pandemic impact on supply chain, and what was the other thing? Was that it?
National, global.
I think
Yeah.
that was it.
It's kind of
What was the right beginning
Global inflation and.
World
and,
events?
World, other
cosmos
world
events.
events.
World events. We are encouraged by stronger revenues and local receipts per rent, hotel room tax, food tax, and automobile receipts. Although inflation percentages are higher than recommended COLA and expense percentages, we must take into consideration the shift in proportional tax burden away from commercial to residential properties and resulting impact on taxpayers' home real estate tax bills. And do we want to say anything else here?
Well, I think the one piece as June was mentioning is the, we're recognizing the impact of the past few years on people's budgets from cuts and other lean increases. And guess we want to indicate we keeping a conservative approach to make sure that we don't get beyond ourselves. Or a better way of saying that. We're probably already several sentences past what most people will read anyways.
No, that's in part why I tried to keep the introduction a bit short, but, you gotta
Yes.
have the information in there too.
Yes.
And, you've all had helpful insight too to lend to it, so that's why it's still a draft. But it will be final tomorrow morning.
If we had an economics professor in here, they probably could turn it into a
Something
28-page
beautiful.
introduction.
Yes,
That
my-
people would be riveted to read,
Yes.
for sure.
Unfortunately, I haven't taken international econ in 15 years, so it's a little, it's been a bit.
So is that a good way to end it off the sentence there about the conservative approach and, or however we want to say that we want to make sure we don't overspend?
Um, let's see if I capture this last sentence. We acknowledge and appreciate the constraint you provided in recent years' budgets, but we urge a conservative approach be maintained in fiscal year '24 in anticipation of unusual legal and other expenses. That was diplomatic, unusually so for me.
You did wonderful there, yes.
Oh, okay,
You
right,
did,
right.
yeah.
Your
yeah.
restraint
No
was
code word.
extraordinary.
Do you want to actually cast an eye on it, Scott?
That sounded pretty good.
Uh,
Why don't you just send it as an email?
I'm sending it right now as an email. That's how I've set it up.
Yeah.
It's just in the text of an email. Draft FinCom notes to the memo, to the budget memo. Okay. So then you've got it, Kristen, stick
Excellent.
in your
Okay.
draft.
Thank you all very much.
Task done, right?
Yes.
Not done maybe, but I do think, and you're gonna do something with that first sentence, yeah? We're gonna be consistent.
We're gonna be consistent.
Yeah.
I'm even gonna
I
throw
hate
something
you.
in there about the residential commercial shift too, because Molly spoke about that, and as part of the tax rate setting, and, you mentioned that as well, so
Okay.
we'll cover that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to not talk about that
No,
enough
it's
because
big.
people are going to see their tax bills and yes, that's going to be a talk.
It is,
And-
it's
and that's-
unavoidable.
And it's not an easy thing to explain.
It's
No,
not.
it's
At least
right.
I'm not
we-
quite
there's-
ready for it.
Right,
There-
I mean, I've been
It's
on
hard.
FinCom for all these years, and there's this disconnect between when we passed town budget last year,
Mhm.
and then the tax bills come out, but there's the whole residential increase, there's the whole increase in value piece to it.
Mhm.
So we tell them that the rate, that we're holding the line on costs, but their tax bills are just gonna go through the roof, and it's like, how do you actually
Well-
explain to people why their tax bills are going so high?
Well, Stan, it's the rate per $1,000 of value, so that's your baseline, but then but this thing about the proportion between commercial and residential,
Is-
and how you
It's
assess
large.
it, that's a hard thing to explain.
Right.
Yeah.
The numbers they put on the tax bill don't really truly are meaningful way to explain to you what, I mean, it tells you how they calculate the number. It does not explain to you why the cost shifted.
Correct.
There's nothing on that tax bill that explains to you the
Right.
cost shifted. There's
Yeah.
nothing, it
Sorry,
would
sorry,
come
you mean
down-
the commercial cost shift?
or residential, anything, on your tax bill, there's nothing that reflects how the shift occurs when the residential is taking on a bigger share of the overall
Mhm.
tax levy from commercial.
Right.
There's nothing in there that says, on your tax bill, it says, the levy was, we collected this much in property tax levy, and commercial took this percentage, residential took this percentage, and now residential is taking a bigger percentage of that.
Correct.
And that the town, everything even, would not collect an extra dollars on any of this stuff, but instead, the commercial is seeing a financial windfall from it, from the property tax piece, and unfortunately, the residents are picking up that deficit that we're not getting from the commercial.
So, I think it's readily understood, especially if you had the fiscal '23 and fiscal '24 proportions given. But what may not be as easy to explain is the why behind the shift.
Yes, well,
That's
that
the part
is-
where I get lost
Yeah.
a bit.
So-
The why behind
Yeah.
the shift, and then the best I can articulate is the commercial revenues are down,
The mall mainly. Solomon
yeah,
Pond.
yeah.
Like
And-
$1 million, Molly said, and the valuation went down about that much.
Well, I suppose that's a shorthand thing, but you can't put that in the tax bill.
Yeah, I was
We
just
were
saying,
just-
it
yeah.
would be nice if there
Small
was some
revenues are
way
down.
we can show the difference because of the values have so changed. Cause in normal world, if your values go up, if we didn't have a split, if your values go up, usually the tax rate goes down,
That's
but
what
the
that's
dollars
what-
are the same.
That's what I was getting at, was
So
where
that's
there's this
easy,
disconnect a little bit.
but now when you have the commercial
Yeah,
split,
yeah.
They were eating up more
now
of
they
that.
had higher values, so they were paying more by the thousand.
We
Yeah.
have more
Correct.
than one moving part here, which is why.
Yeah.
There's several.
Unfortunately, we have a huge, and that was a big one.
Well, don't you think part of but this is how I've been looking at it, when is that our own house values are increasing, so therefore your tax dollar is gonna increase because your house value goes up. However, when you go in the mall and you see half the mall empty, they're going down, so their tax base is going down, so that's the piece we're having to make up, is because that piece is so much. That's how I kind of figured it out in my own head when you're all talking about this. But like maybe I hate to say it, a PowerPoint presentation
Right.
somehow to be able to explain it.
No.
I don't know.
Oh,
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think there's a lot of people that don't understand it. And you know, we've done our best to try to keep taxes down, and
Well, I think an important piece to point out too is, in an effort to keep taxes down, Berlin does not tax to the levy. There
Right.
is excess capacity that Berlin could tax and does not, because we are so conservative in our spending. And, you know, I think that's a component of it as well, so.
Now you're really giving me a job to explain it to people.
It could be worse, Mary, that's what you have to say. It could be worse, but we're trying to make it as least painful as possible.
We're trying to only use money that's needed to
Correct.
maintain or keep the level of services that people want, I guess. It's not,
Correct.
we're not like going nuts, but yet, I mean, the more people from the city come in, they want more, and I think that's where for us, who have been here a while, it's harder, because they want it and they're okay with paying it, but not everybody can do that. I think
Correct.
that's where we're trying to keep
Well,
it,
that's
is,
an interesting comment, interesting observation. Yeah, yeah.
Well, and not that we're anywhere near Prop 2.5 concerns, because you said we're actually way under the levy limit. But how does that factor into property value increases?
nothing.
Nothing.
No.
So your tax bill can go up by way more than 2.5%
Oh, God, yeah.
Yep.
just because the valuations go up. by
Correct.
more. It doesn't, so the 2.5
That's
is only
independent.
is the rate,
It's still
correct?
it's all based on what we budget. It's just a matter of the values are what's the allocation.
Right.
So if the values on the mall had stayed where they were, there would be
Yeah.
very minimal impact per se. But because the values at the mall went down,
Mhm.
there wasn't that shift of, if our values had gone down the other way, then they would be paying more. So it's just,
Because
it's
they're
really.
because they're paying on the value, just like
We are.
just like
Right.
we are.
They were paying a
But
larger
and-
piece of the pie, and now we're
And
paying residential.
it's not an even split. We are putting 1.49%, is that what we
Yes,
went with? Of a shift to, so they are paying a percentage more.
Lost me there. Do it.
We have something that the select board can vote on a split. So instead of us doing 100%, everybody pays the same.
Yeah,
We're actually shifting it so that, commercial is actually paying more
Yeah.
of a percentage. So that is helping, but we're almost,
that's right, because
At
what's the
at
point
the
of having a
max
split
of
if they're
what they
not?
can pay.
and if they can't afford it and they're not gonna pay their taxes, we don't wanna,
Mhm.
rely on that fund to come
Yeah.
in and then us not have it and taxes really go up.
Right. And I think, June, you made an important point too about budgets. What we're really trying to do is maintain existing services, do a small increase only where the need is extremely justified, supplemental funding request form preview. and account for increase in costs in existing services, because, you know, we've talked a lot about the personnel side. Those expense increase costs impact us as well, so we have to address that. So if you'd like, without further ado.
Yes.
We have this form this year because I really want folks to justify the need. If they're telling me, I need this, it's new, it costs money, I want to know why. So this form was designed to be very simple, straightforward, but to have folks say, this is something new, whether it's a piece of equipment, a training, an employee, a service to be provided. The form asks for basically the amount, the item requested, whether it's a one-time expense or an ongoing expense, a description of the request, explanation of need, and most importantly, how will you meet this need should this request not be funded? And I like to give the example of, you know, a filing cabinet. So I have files stacked up on my floor, they should be locked away, so if you don't give me a filing cabinet, they will continue to sit on my floor. Versus Eloise saying, it's a presidential year, I have all of these presidential ballots we have to mail out, and there's extra postage. So if we don't get the extra postage for the ballots, we will not be in compliance with the law, and we will have voter fraud issues. So, you know.
We can just join the rest of the country.
We can. We absolutely can. But you know, the difference is this something that can continue to go on, or is this something that absolutely has to be funded now, and what are the repercussions if we don't fund it now? And so the purpose of this form was really, rather than having someone just kind of work it into the budget forms where it doesn't really get called out, to actually have folks kind of explain and justify the need. And I think it makes it more transparent, and it allows you and the select board to kind of go through a process similar to what capital goes through, where they get the forms for each of those items and they can rate and rank them and say, yeah, we can do this year, maybe next year, maybe 5 years, maybe never. So that's just kind of the purpose of this form, and that's the only thing we've changed in the budget packet.
Yeah, because last year, that was discussed, but I think it got woven into the summary part of the budgets, not the actual budget summary forms. So some of them, I don't know if we ever really had the time to go back and relook at anything that, you know, somebody may have requested or thought would be a really great idea. We didn't get to go back and address it. And I think some of that too was just the time that we had was not maybe gone back to the departments to say this is what we've come up with. So this was, I think, was a better idea that you came up with, so that way there at least there's a flag that says, okay, I kind of really need this, but I don't want you to look at my budget. My budget just went up 20%, and you go, oh yeah, no, not happening. But this could be another way of drawing attention to it, to say this is why.
I think we lost sight of some of attention when we started lumping everything together and taking out line. I'm in favor of line item, you know, and we in order, if I understand correctly, in order to speed up town meeting, we started lumping things together, and it made it less transparent, and things did get put in, and people were like, well, I didn't know that. Well, you voted on it, because it was lumped in rather than, you know, spelt out by the line item. And I really want to get back to the line items, like addressing line items for everybody to see.
Individually.
Yep.
I mean, it's still voted by the line item, it's just instead of going line item by line item, it's done in a category.
Yeah, but
now. But the line items are the same.
It's printed in the warrant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
we
it's there,
haven't
Jenny, you
deleted
just have to-
it.
No,
You're
no,
running
it's
it
not
back.
how it used to be. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Well-
It's still in the same line items.
Yeah, the one big change I think is referring to, especially the one that I'm really conflicted with, and more often than not I'm against it, is the changes in the capital plan being and I know it's just speed up town meeting, is all the things lumped together as one vote. And I personally liked it better, even though it was might be 10 items you had to individually voted on, it still was 10 items that got their own individual, look at it as they're getting to the vote. Even though they listed it out, each one still just as nicely as it was previous, it's just the fact, it makes it messy when you don't like something in there. It's one of those like, okay, I agree with 9 of the 10 of these things, but I either have to say no, vote no for the whole thing, or else I have to, all right, I like these other 9 and I'll just accept this and don't get a chance to vote no on this other one. At least from my standpoint,
No, I
that's the
totally agree,
one
yeah.
like I said, I understand why it's being done, and sometimes you can convince me, it could be like 50-50 on it, but most of the time I'm like, 80% don't like it. But I know if we're getting through town meeting faster, I'm sure everybody is 100% liking it.
You might be able to talk with Barry about that to see if there's a way for him when he presents it to somehow, whether it be, question 1, 2, 3, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
we could even do that, so that way if there's a discussion that needs to be had on an item.
Motions or,
I don't know how, I don't think he did that.
I-
Well, the only way you'd be able to do it would, excuse me, would be to say, I'd like to pull out, because we do number them from,
Yeah.
I'd like to pull out 3 and making a, what do you call that?
An
when
amended.
Amendment to vote on one separately. I suppose you could do
You could do
that.
that, but I think it would be
But-
probably easier or better, maybe, like Scott said.
No, I
is that
agree
you
with
couldn't,
Scott.
Discuss it even, because you
Mhm.
may, once you've heard something, you may feel different on it.
Mhm.
But I see what you're saying.
I think there's a larger reason for voting it as a group, not just for expediency's sake, but because it's a plan. So with capital, it's supposed to be a 5-year plan, and it's supposed to be mapped out years 1 through 5. And the idea of the capital committee is they're really supposed to look at the highest needs for that year, department by department, and fit it kind of together. So I think there's that component of it as well, in addition to just going, let's speed through it. Because capital has taken the time to go through and say, this is absolutely what we feel we need to have this year as part of year X plan. So that's all I had on that form. And I have one more thing for you. We talked about the letter to.
Choose our limit, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Choose our limit.
Choose your
I
limit?
start nodding off. after
Start
this.
nodding
Say,
off?
is it-
I can make this
Oh,
really
yeah,
quick.
you gotta make this quick.
Oh, I gotta make this quick, it's 8:30, okay. We talked about the letter to the schools, the joint letter from the select board and the school, the FinCom to the schools. I did speak with the board about it, Monday, and there was kind of a thought of paring it down a bit and giving them the instructions, making sure that they have the date of which to attend the meeting, and that we want their budget estimates by the end of the year. So I drafted up something that was rather simple, and you have it here for you to take a look at.
It was significantly shorter than last year's joint letter.
It is. And my kind of thinking on that was I didn't know if we needed to hammer home exactly the same points as last year, because some of those items they're not required to provide. It's great if they do, and we would like for them to provide it, but we did give them that guidance previously. And I don't know if we send them the exact same letter, will they read it? You know what I mean? I was kind of thinking, like, do we simplify it a little bit? So,
End of this.
Maybe put it on a colored paper.
could do that. Sure thing.
Cherry, right, cherry.
Yeah.
Cherry, like a cherry
I
sheet.
don't care, but I just
Love
know
it.
that when something comes and it's not on plain white, I go, oh, what's this?
It makes you look at it, like
Makes you
that
look
yellow
at
piece
it.
of paper that's sitting over
Yeah.
there, whatever you have, jumps out at you.
All eyes drawn to it, yeah.
It does. So I don't know, I did draft this up after the board meetings. I haven't shared this with the select board. I wanted to get your input first.
The one thing I did have time to go through, more so than the other pieces, was this letter. And I attended the meeting, heard the feedback from the select board. And I do agree that, I remember last year, in fact, I don't even remember the details. I think some of this even grew after it grew for the select board on the 7 bullets in here. The one thing I did like that was particularly on this here is a reminder of the big increases they've had now 2 years in a row.
Okay.
because what was reflected well last time, so I didn't know exactly how to throw all the numbers in there, was we basically, if you looked at the draft from what was submitted the previous year, from fiscal year 21 to 22, the total growth was almost $308,000 for Berlin's piece of the schools. From 22 to 23, it was almost identical. It was $305,000, so it was $3,000 less. So we've had two very steady, big increases. And to reflect those increases was, and I know I didn't put it into for the total budget, how it represented. I looked at it as individuals for the schools. So the percentage increase from FY21 to 22, for BMS it was 4.2 and 6.4. And then from 22 to 23, BMS was now 4.5, even went up higher percentage, and Tohoto was 5.4.
There it is, BMS and Tohoto, okay. So let me just ask, you don't do any kind of a set split, and it must be because there's the regional component to it. Like, so in Leicester, it was always a 75-25 split between town and school, and we gave the school a number to hit.
Yeah, that was, for my previous years, way back in the early 2000s, or late 2006 to whatever, 12, whatever. I know Boylston, that was a big way they did it. They had you are a certain percentage of our budget, and you're not going to go, you still got that percentage of your budget, and you're not going to go over that percentage of the budget. And I think we benefited during those years because their student counts were going up. And when I say we benefited is they were cutting the budget more than Berlin was responsible for at that time. And because it was just use the rough estimate, they were like $2 for every $1 for us. They were like 2/3 or 1/3.
Mm-hmm.
So every time they said, there's $2 in cuts they wanted from Tohoto would make $3 in cuts.
Okay.
Because you have to keep that percentages. So in many ways, if both towns went with that approach, it would never work really well. Because one town will be, it's like, well, we're going to give you that percentage, but we can't give you that percentage because the other town is less, right? I mean, in
Right, we're
a
not on the
particular
same
year, it could be
amount.
which town is causing the shortage. It can move around, right?
Right.
And right now, in the last few years, we're kind of really being slammed by the percentage of students Berlin had over there. That's part of the reason why our Tohoto, or numbers have gone up so high.
And that's because it
So-
comes through more as an assessment as opposed to a revenue splitting
Yeah,
measure
it's-
that you're, agreeing to.
Yes. So it becomes difficult when you take that scenario into I mean, it's easy with the BMS.
Yeah.
You could say, this is your percentage of our budget, and you're not going to change that percentage. So if our budget goes up by 2.5%, you've got 2.5%, and you have to work in that. Tohoto's a different beast,
Okay.
and I don't know how. I mean, Leicester probably didn't have any regional
It was
thing in
all
there, right?
local, right? It was within Leicester Public Schools, so, yeah. Makes it a little bit more difficult, so I understand, the message of trying to, say we can't give you, it doesn't work that way. You can't give them a bottom line number and say stay within it, but,
Of course, one of the other drawbacks too we have with our breakdown of, we own all of BMS and then have the percentage with Tohoto. In the end, we look at it all as one lump sum anyways that's going to the schools. And the unfortunate thing is, if they need to make cuts, and this is just like on the Boylston side with BES, it's to their advantage to make the cuts at the elementary schools, because every dollar cut we ask them to make, it's that dollar amount. Every dollar cut they make at Tohoto, it's, if we're asking for a dollar cut, it's $3 coming total, because, or approximately whatever the breakdown is.
right.
So the elementary schools are all at a disadvantage in those scenarios too.
Even with the regionalization
I
now?
was gonna say, I
'Cause I don't
think
think
No.
once it's voted,
Once
I
it's-
think
yeah.
they can do whatever they
Yeah.
want with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're the ones who are separating it, cause
We're
Yeah.
separating it.
Yeah.
been having a problem with that,
Yeah.
cause I report it that way, and then they hold up all my stuff because we don't
Yeah,
have 3
it's-
schools.
We
We only have 2.
Rob Peter to pay
So
Paul, is how it
technically-
always works.
Yeah, so technically it doesn't matter.
Okay,
Yeah.
so technically just one bill that is, or
Technically,
one
I
check that's
believe
handed
so,
over
yes.
to them
I
essentially.
think so.
That's how I'm understanding it now.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that 100%, but I'm about 98% sure. I'm thinking that even though we vote it line item separate, doesn't matter, because it's the regional school.
It's bottom line budgeting, probably for
Yeah.
them as
I
well,
think so,
they
because
can
when
move
they
between
send
line
us the
items.
assessments, it's one lump sum, and then
Yep.
they get really mad because they say, well, I gotta take it out of this line, and I have to take it out of that line. Yeah.
Yeah, by state law.
You don't think it's what we vote as a budget and what Boylston votes as a budget, and they put the two together?
I don't know how Boylston votes it.
Mm.
I've never actually looked.
You don't know if they adhere to the breakdown that we.
Exactly, I don't know
Right.
that, because I don't see anything from the school as far as like how their reports are broken down.
But the assessment, does the assessment equal the number that
Yes.
we've passed at town
Yes.
meeting?
Overall number,
Yeah,
right?
the
overall,
overall
yeah.
number is the same, but it
And I give it to
doesn't,
them out of the line items.
right.
But do they have to keep it that way? I don't believe they do. 'cause
I don't
they're
think
one
they do.
region.
I don't think they do either.
I
I'm
mean, they
like,
don't have to spend it on Berlin, on the elementary
so.
school as we break it out.
I don't
versus-
know that.
okay.
That would be something I would be interested in, because we could still vote it that way
Yeah.
if we want to, but technically if it's
They
that.
don't have to spend it that way.
yeah. I like silly example, like snow plowing. You know, if they, they budget, X amount for snow plowing and, they're only gonna spend a third of it this year, that snow plowing money can be spent somewhere else, but we think it's all being spent on, you know what I mean? Or copy machines. If they don't use all their paper that they thought they were gonna budget for, they can take that money and put it towards art supplies.
Yeah, because before, when they were separate,
Yeah.
it was separate.
Right.
But now that they're one region,
Yeah. I think that's how I understood it, but I might be wrong.
No, yeah, I mean, I can tell you, in Leicester, there are 3 schools. There's an elementary, a middle, and a high school. And, it is one bottom line vote for the entire schools, and they can move that money between all 3
Yeah.
schools. It's not broken down, so.
I mean, I would assume that they have to budget that way, just,
They budget,
when
but
they're-
then they can move.
but then they can move once it's been voted. I
And
think.
and the way that was explained to me, because I know that is a real cross for a lot of people, that they don't have to adhere to a line item budget, because of the influx of students coming in and then students leaving, and not knowing if those students are going to have special needs or what they may have. That is why they need the flexibility in their budget, and that is why the state gives it, is really what it comes down to, because their situation is constantly in flux.
That makes sense. But Janet, I think they give us a look backwards when they come around and say, okay, here's what we want to do for the upcoming year's budget.
Mhm.
They'll have the prior years where they spent the actual expenses. So
Mhm.
in those, dare I say it, PowerPoints that they showed
Yeah.
us, you had some tables of that kind
Right.
of expenditure. So you do see where they landed.
And I think they do that in their reports too, in the town reports.
Well,
Exactly,
yeah,
yeah,
but
'cause they
it's,
have
but
to
it's
provide
not,
that for the
it's not
state.
like, I don't know how to explain it. Been to enough of the meetings to understand it, you know what I mean?
But it is, it's one of those where even though it's kind of like when we budget, even our regular budgets, and I'll just do it as more of a small thing. Like you said with snow, you have X amount for salt, you have so much for sand, you know what I mean? So it's itemized like that, but when we vote it, it's a 1. So they don't have to keep it at exactly,
Yeah.
because that would be a lot of work, for me.
We may spend
Um,
less on sand and more on salt.
Exactly.
Sorry,
Or-
Scott.
Or something
Yeah,
happened
exactly.
and they need to make a repair and
Yeah,
it's
Right.
there,
yeah.
So it's
so
not any
yeah.
different than our transfers
kind
at
of,
the end
except
the
it's
year
in a
for-
very large scale.
Right, they move a lot more than we do, and they don't have to go through the
Yeah.
same
I think they
regimented
still-
process
They still
that
have to
we
go though
do.
to the school committee, don't they, usually on moving stuff around, they still kind of,
I would assume the school committee has some control
I think
over
they
that.
do, and I think it's discussed at that level, but
Okay, well, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think
just
you're
like-
absolutely right
I
there.
thought the school committee and operations
Oh.
were.
Well, they still vote on the
The
budget,
operations
they,
people.
yeah, cause I thought they do have to still move, I just vaguely remember Chris saying something about it, I think, that they're usually aware of it, not always, I think, but.
We should have known that
They
before
may
we voted
provide
on
them
the
a
school board
report.
members last night.
Committee.
Committee.
keep
So I guess
calling
that's a
the
good
board
question, we
committee.
should just confirm with them is, who's the new finance person, or do we know? the name?
Nancy Kaninsky? I forget exactly what her last name is.
Didn't she, come in a cameo in front of us? Didn't she come along with the team? Last
Yes, she
year.
did.
Trying to remember,
Yeah,
because they also
because,
had a new
uh,
finance person at Assabet
Conley.
too, right? Wasn't there?
Or was it
also-
Assabet, I'm thinking?
No, they had the same guy.
Was it the same person at Assabet?
I thought so.
We said it was Kaminsky, his last name, or?
Her.
Nancy Koniski, I believe,
Konin-
Konisky, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay.
Koniski, not sure how you say
She came from Douglas, did she one from Douglas?
it. Not sure.
I was on that,
Could very well be.
I was on that hiring committee,
Oh,
but
there you go.
but only at the first meeting, so the only one I was able to attend. So I'm not positive that's who they actually, if it's the same one I'm thinking of.
In addition to the numbers, which are great, thank you for giving them to me, by the way. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the letter?
That was everything I really had. What did you have for a date on requesting the budget? I know it was December 31st. I thought actually what we had changed last time too was earlier than December 31st, but is it December 15th when we're planning to meet with them?
So you're planning to meet the 14th,
Or
but it
14th.
did say in the last year's letter the 31st, so I just carried that
Okay.
over. That can change. I just brought over what was in the last letter. So I didn't know what your intent was on the 14th, if that was like a preview of coming attractions, and then they submit the budget on the 31st, or kind of what your plan was for that.
Well, why wouldn't it be the same date? Why
Yeah,
don't we
I
have
think
them
it would
give
be
us
the
a
same
preliminary
date.
budget on the 14th?
That
Yes.
would make, I
And
think
then-
that would make
Yes.
sense.
Uh,
So we'll tie those two paragraphs together, make it the 14th.
For some reason, I'm thinking that they aren't able to do it that early, but I don't remember what the reasoning was behind it.
Yeah, I remember something, yeah.
I can't remember if it has to do with the state or a special ed or,
They get so much from chapter 70, and so much of their revenue comes from the cherry sheet, which doesn't come out till January.
yeah, for some reason I
So
thought
that
there
might be
was
part of it.
some kind of,
And didn't something change because we went regional?
I don't know if in the regional agreement there's a date in there that says something about it either.
Yeah, but didn't something change with monies because we also went regional? The chapter money, something changed with that,
Oh, instead of the town getting the money, they got the money, but.
Do we want to make that, I mean, we can ask them to do it and let them tell us that that's not feasible.
Well, I'd like to have them, there's certain information they do know. I mean, obviously, there's a lot that they don't know. I mean, I understand that's their biggest thing is that there is a lot of unknown. But at the same time, it's not, that there is a lot of things that they can tell us. And that's why I would like to still keep the push of, tell us what you know at this point, even though they know there's lots of unknown, because without it, we've got zero insight into what their needs are, or what they are possibly coming back towards us.
Does that make sense?
Right, and if nothing else, you'd think they should be able to tell us, like, how they kind of finished out the year
Mhm.
last year.
Oh, we can
which,
add that in,
you know,
yeah.
should give us a little bit of insight as to how
Yeah.
this year is gonna go. I mean, if they ended up having to really shift things around or do some gymnastics or ended up in some big holes or something at the end of the year, we wouldn't know that until they come back around this time, but they know that now.
Going
Like,
in,
they might
right.
not know exactly how much they wanna ask for, or how much that, but
Right.
there should at least be able to be a snapshot of what, I think, or.
And
I
they'll
mean-
have almost 6 months of this
Yeah,
year to see
absolutely.
what's happening, and whether it be special ed or.
Right. It's an easy crutch to say, look, we don't know what exactly what's going on. It's true, you don't know, but
Not
you've got
exact
some.
Tell us what
dollars,
you
but.
do.
Yeah,
What's
exactly,
the fee?
exactly like Scott said, tell us
Yeah.
what you do know, because
Yeah.
there's gonna be stuff that they do know.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I'm
think-
looking at what they gave us in mid-December, it's exactly what they did. They talked about what had been going on and
Yeah.
where they thought they might be going in
Yeah.
next
Mm.
year.
And they can also probably see where the enrollment is too.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot can change between now and then, but.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it as, right, I mean, they told us a lot. I also like to look at, because you know what they're gonna come in are gonna probably be ugly numbers, right? I mean, and they were, I mean, they had, you know, their,
They
you
were.
know,
They
level
actually were.
services
They
and
were.
what we'd love to do in adding services, and those were percentages, but at the same time, they put a ceiling on something. Otherwise, we go in not having any ceiling.
Sure.
It might be ceilings that are way higher than we know could ever happen, but at least we have that ceiling. And that helps a lot.
Okay, and definitely I'll add that in.
And they don't go through capital, right? So if they had any major repairs or,
They,
that's when it would,
they submitted a capital request.
Yes, they do.
it's line item separate, but I'm
Okay.
just thinking in general, they don't have to go through the whole capital planning
Oh, I gotcha.
part of it, so that's, could hit us hard too. But if they know this is, you know, I don't wanna jinx anything, but.
Well, when we pushed back last year, they zeroed out Berlin Memorial Capital Assessment. They just zeroed it out. So that's what we got here.
Yeah.
Tohoto, for some reason, we needed to keep some, but the capital, Tohoto was 2.8% on the capital assessment, and
Yeah, I think Tohonto's was
year
like
year on year,
14,000.
the increase was 0 on Berlin Memorial Capital Assessment. So
We can say something maybe to the effect of, we like what you provided last year for information, or, I mean, if that's.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that probably would be a good thing to
You know.
encourage them. Yes, exactly. That you
Keep
you
going
were
down
yes.
that path, that was a good
Yes.
direction to go, and we like it.
Helped a lot,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep, okay, I can work on kind
Do-
of spiffing this up some.
Do you want us to look at this paragraph that Mary put together so that you can get that done? I mean, we all have it if you wanna, I mean, and you said it by tomorrow morning, but I mean, we're all gonna go home and we're gonna forget about this
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's gonna be
absolutely.
done.
We're gonna look at
Especially
this.
You
Stan.
don't forget
Stan's
about-
already
What's
checked
this
out.
especially
Stan
Cause
business.
he's gonna go home and go to bed, he's not
That's
gonna
true.
remember
Stan's
that we
gonna-
have
Stan is
this,
gonna go home
so.
and go to bed.
Wow,
You're
now we're
right.
speaking of
Did-
ourselves
did
in
you
the
read
third
it?
person.
Do you wanna read it?
I could take.
You may read it, all, you got
I
yours,
got it.
okay, if you wanna.
See, I'm at the stage in life. where
Stan's
I'm
already
so close.
sleeping. At least the Bruins aren't on.
Yeah, you can't blame me for that then.
Yep,
Like you tried to blame me at the last meeting.
I did.
Didn't they lose that
But the
game,
Celtics
too?
are on, I've been watching.
They lost the game,
Thank
didn't
you,
they?
Mary, for writing that up, that's
Or
just.
no, they weren't on that night.
well,
I still say we need to put
I wonder if
national
we should
climate.
do we want the word legal expenses in there, or is that gonna introduce too many questions?
Yeah,
It almost
like-
sounds a little alarmist.
Yes,
Yeah.
Like,
I would say,
I know
maybe
we
just
have,
drop.
we have a lot this year, I don't know that we
There was a few other
anticipate having
things
a lot
too, cause like we
next
need,
year.
money for the police wages is another issue we have. Trying to think what are the other things.
so
Unemployment is probably gonna be an issue too, so I don't know whether it's necessary expenses or something like that. Cause they're all not really negotiable per se.
mandatory expenses. Janet, do you wanna change? You got you can draft there where it says legal expenses, just make it.
I'm trying to find it, I read it, but I
Oh, yeah.
can't find,
There it
I
is.
oh,
made a
Very
note
good.
of it, if that's okay.
so what do you want me to say?
Mandatory.
Take out legal
Well-
and just put mandatory expenses.
Yeah, I don't know where else we-
You don't have to send it back to me if you don't want, I made a note of it on here.
Okay.
I can
Okay.
correct it.
I can't say crap.
Unless,
I don't care.
this committee, I don't know if if people here tonight want the final word, then this is your moment. I sent an
Yes.
email to everybody, so
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah,
I think it's-
I'm okay with it, except I still say we need to put, add in, national climate as well, instead of just global, because I really do think that there's an awful lot going on in our own nation that's going to impact us, but That's my own personal opinion.
Impact of global,
We're-
yeah. you
Yeah, it's
can-
going on here, Janet, it's even worse elsewhere. Okay.
In this room, you mean?
No.
In the-
In this,
Scroll-
in this
scroll back.
nation, I mean.
Yeah, I
This
know,
nation
I know,
versus
that's,
other nations.
I totally,
It's worse in other nations.
I get that it's worse than other nations.
And why, and at the end, why just say instead of and world events and other national and world events?
It doesn't matter to me, it's fine.
Whatever you
I
guys
do agree
make
what you're
sure
saying,
Kristen
we're
knows
not,
what you've
yeah,
done or
yeah,
what
yeah.
you've
I haven't
done.
done anything, I didn't touch it. We eliminated whatever that one word and Kristen was gonna take care of it
If it's
herself.
important to you, get it written down.
I'm
and hold
not
it to
touching
Kristen.
it, it's
important.
perfect.
Because Kristen could make crap up. but-
Kristen's gonna take out whatever that legal thing was,
Because
we're
I-
done with it.
Because I do that.
I have a
and-
liberal arts education.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Making up and stringing lovely things together is a big part of that.
So what all my dollars went to my dollars?
Are we done? Motion to adjourn?
Oh,
Just
what do
like,
you, what do you
do
do
we
with
have
that
any minutes
paragraph?
that we need to?
I
No.
didn't do anything
Nothing?
with the Kara. Kristen was going to take out the word legal and we were gonna leave everything the
Okay.
way it was.
Okay, okay.
That's what I
Everything else
said.
stays the same. We're not
Yeah,
doing anything.
yeah, that's what I said.
So
Okay.
does that motion hold, or do we have to?
Oh, do we have to make a vote? on that?
She heard you.
No, I thought you
Oh.
said made a motion to adjourn.
I did make a motion to adjourn.
We haven't even, this,
Wait a minute.
there might be other information that
I was
Scott
gonna say,
wants to
I'm,
impart
I'm
on.
done, but I don't know if.
I,
you all
no, I
have
wasn't
anything.
making the motion, I was asking.
The only other part I
Okay,
wanted to.
that's what I was asking.
Oh,
confirm was
sorry,
our
sorry.
next
No,
meeting
no,
date.
no, I
You
asked.
got this
Okay.
guy. You need to get
Yes,
control of this
exactly.
committee.
What-
Come on.
When's our next meeting date?
Yeah, when
Just
is
wanna
it?
Next
confirm that.
Wednesday.
Oh, you
Next
have a
Wednesday.
calendar. Is it next Wednesday? that-
Yes. It's
Yep.
next Wednesday, the 16th.
And what's our agenda?
Oh,
for
No, it's
are they
the-
coming to the kickoff? Is anybody coming to the kickoff?
Coming on the 15th to the kickoff?
The kickoff is on Tuesday, right?
Tuesday.
And
It's
you have
at
two of them,
10?
Yes.
10 a.m.
10 and 6.
and then
And
at
one
6
at
Oh, I
o'clock.
can't do 10 a.m.
On Tuesday at 10 a.m.
Oh,
you know,
oh, I
could
can't
not
do
be-
Tuesday. I have a commitment.
Oh,
I could do 6
We'll be here
o'clock.
Wednesday as well then. It sounds,
Oh, you got one on Wednesday too, or is
well,
it
you
both
have
on
you
Tuesday?
on Wednesday, right? No, we don't have you on.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have you
yeah.
on
What's
Wednesday.
our agenda for?
You were
that
covering it up
Wednesday
on
meeting?
paper. It's okay.
I have to
Next
look
week,
at my
what do we wanna do
calendar.
already
I'm
next
sorry.
week?
I
So
was gonna say,
next
I don't have
week
anything for you for next week.
That's what I was wondering,
Is the
exactly what. if
preliminary-
there's-
Yeah, no, I
there is
know all
nothing-
that. I
feel
have
like
it.
All,
Take
all
that
it's
one.
gonna be is the,
He's doing-
if you want a copy of the packet, which you can also, I can send to you electronically, or you can pick
Yes.
up in my office.
Send it to
How's
us
that? And
electronically.
you can get a week off.
Yeah.
So you
Oh,
No,
want,
well,
Oh,
the
but-
old regime didn't, the new one might.
are we
Cancel.
canceling
Possible.
next week?
I think it's the
Don't be
unanimous.
making
Unless
rash-
you all have
rash
something, I
Cancel
have
next week.
nothing for you
Well, that
beyond
would
the
work
packet.
out, you mean on the Wednesday meeting? That might work out good for me, because unfortunately, I signed up for a grad class on the there's 7 of us in the class, or 7 people, and 6 of the people voted to meet on Thursday nights. I was not one of them. So, because that's the night capital planning meets, so now we're trying to figure out when we can switch to capital planning, but maybe we could switch it to the 16th if we're not meeting, following my
They can
thought
have
process.
this
Sort of
room
a-
too.
And we
because-
could have this room.
Yeah,
Do we have any business to conduct on that, at that next meeting date?
I don't
Sounds like
think there's
no.
anything. The answer is no.
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 Just
Not on
preliminary,
my
so you
end.
might get a few budgets in, but not, you
Yeah.
have to approve them first.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, I might get
Yeah.
budgets in that day, but
Is it?
So I
is it
think
u-
we've agreed that we don't need a meeting, right?
excellent.
so
Awesome.
Is it useful to have somebody from FinCom at that kickoff or no?
I would love someone or anyone or all
Is it gonna
of
be in
you,
person,
if you
or is it
want.
gonna be a hybrid?
It will be, that's a good question.
Questions get harder later.
I think we're gonna have to do it Zoom, right, because we don't have a space big enough, or do you think there's enough, we can do it in the room across the way?
Well, I would love, because it's your first meeting, that we have everybody there, but
100% attendance.
Not gonna happen.
10
Okay.
people is a lot.
Mandatory.
Like,
Okay, we can have
That
it across,
includes us.
we can have it across the
That
hall. I'll
includes
have to put it
us.
on the calendar.
I can
Eight
attend
other
Tuesday,
people.
assuming no other events get in my way, but I can do
Okay.
Tuesday.
Let me go, just check the calendar, make sure we can do it
It's like
across the
6
hall.
o'clock Tuesday, right? Or, I'm not gonna be able to make the morning, I know
No,
that, that's just
okay.
not happening.
Can't remember if we did a live last year or not.
I bet it was.
I don't think it was alive.
Did we do a
We
lot?
were-
Or did we Zoom still last year?
I think it
We
was.
were trying to go in person and then had to switch back to Zoom at some point, so.
It's not posted.
Well, the finance committee was one of the few that was starting to go in person.
not
And we
Yeah.
did it in
We
December
don't
and then
have a
everything
full
got
board
shut down
committee.
as
Yeah,
the
so I don't think,
holidays.
so that, I guess the budgets couldn't have been in
It's
person
just
then if we didn't
Like a
go.
department
Yeah.
head,
In person till
boards and
December.
committees, they come, they sit, they take their paperwork,
Okay.
leave. We hope. One vote, no.
Okay,
All right,
so then
so-
when is our next meeting then?
so-
So we have to cancel that on,
So the
Next week
next
and
one
it's
is
till
14th.
December 14th.
December 14th.
Yep, and that's schools hopefully and fire.
And then after that, we are coming in every Wednesday till we're done.
Yes.
starting
Oh
to
yeah, I
feel a
gotta
cold
pick your
coming on.
January dates.
It's early, Stan.
Permanent monthly cold.
Just keep it cold, that's all.
I
Don't
just
do
got a little
anything else.
tickle.
So are we gonna adjourn or?
Yes, I think we are all set
So,
for
I'm,
that.
I'm not saying
Entertain a
another
motion.
word until I get the elbow from the chair. Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Enough said.
I was gonna say, 2 minutes.
I still gotta walk to the car too. I don't wanna
I know.
fall asleep on the stairs.
Don't worry about it, we'll move you over
Okay.
in the morning.
Fireman scaring me over there. Oh, would just kick me to the side.
What do we have to
Way
do
out
with
the
our
door.
scissors?